Speaking of undervalued gold stocks, Saturn Metals is the next company, and Shark Tank Headley has already put $3 million into this company, and I certainly don't blame him. This was a very free-flowing stock once the resource at free-running stock once the resource at Apollo Hill grew, and as you can see there, it's had quite a lot of decent spikes in its history, and now it's trading not far off its all-time low at a time where the company's resource is certainly growing, and it's now over 1.8 million ounces. But I think what was a bit of a surprise to everyone was some of these high-grade hits. So the deposit, as Headley explained, is low-grade. It is going to be a potential heap leach operation where quite a large percentage of the world's gold production is in fact heap leach. But we do see some higher grade gold results. And I mean, these are results similar to what Spartan, the old Gascoigne, have come up with at Never Never. I'm not saying that this is by any stretch a high grade deposit. We are going to have zones of high grade in essentially what's a low grade gold deposit. The key is not only the heap leach potential plus the ounces per vertical meter. And if you're there, Ian?
Yeah, I am. So
yeah,
you've I guess both Headley and yourself have given me some great talking points there. So thank you very much. And look at I suppose on those results last week, you know, I'll make the point. I'll make a few points. They're not that uncommon in Apollo Hill, and the grade that we present that deposit and the way that we're looking at mining it and processing it is very much a choice. I suppose you showed the share price graph, and there's a number of spikes within there, and that's because Apollo Hill does throw out some absolutely beautiful intersections. And I suppose that the spacing and the size of this deposit, the way we drill it and bulk it up, they really get swallowed up into some big selective mining units. So that that's the first point I'll make, that it isn't uncommon. There is some beautiful grade within it, but we've chosen to push the cutoff grade down, bulk it up into one huge deposit. And as Headley mentioned, perhaps the economics on this thing are very different in that we have an ultra low stripping ratio. Even arguably for heap leach deposits, this is in the upper quartile or upper 10th percentile in terms of its strip ratio at only 1.5 to 1, which is phenomenal. That just pushes that cost structure right down. Within that, we do have probably the purest, simplest metallurgy that I've ever seen. There's no copper, there's no arsenic, it's just gold in quartz and easily liberated and attacked by cyanide. And I suppose the other point I'd like to make about those intersections, and when we're comparing them, I think we made the top 3 list last week for gold intersections. I'd like to make the point that my intersection was 10 meters from the surface, not 300 or 400 meters underground. So to actually get to that value, is pretty simple. So I'd argue we should have been the number 1 intersection in that table last week if you look at the way this thing undermined or pulled out. That's a sort of a bit of a lead in, I suppose.
I guess based on, we've seen quite a few acquisitions lately. There's quite a few predators out there, and they're paying over $100 per ounce. And if I look at your valuation, you're probably sub 20 at the moment, $20 an ounce. With you describe this beautiful gold deposit. Do you see yourself as a lowball takeover target, or a company that's going to be able to get this thing into production and grow?
I think we have an elegant a very elegant story in that we have, I suppose, a very simple deposit with a simple processing circuit, and we have a deposit where there's 1.84 million ounces in a single simple pit. To some respect, that sounds attractive to people, but I guess the other thing we've also done is we've differentiated ourselves with the mineral processing. A lot of the acquisitions you'll see in our region at the moment are it's based on a sort of milling-based strategy or consolidation. Apollo Hill, beyond the resource that we already have, still has a huge exploration potential, and I think it can very much stand alone and doesn't necessarily fit in its optimal form into other people's milling-based strategy. So to some respect, that's a bit of a defence in its own right. You might want a short-term win, but when I look at the exploration potential either in that deposit or the surrounding 1,000 square kilometres of ground that we've got, the 40-kilometre drill-based gold anomaly that sits around Apollo Hill with about 20 prospects on it already in pure greenfields territory that hasn't had the exploration focus that I suppose that surrounding district has. I just don't want to be taken over. The best value in return for shareholders is I suppose demonstrated with what we've got, and you can never be too arrogant or cocky, or there's some great people around us with some great ideas and some great business plans, but I suppose what we're focused on is showing the value that not even the longer term, I think even the sort of near term, medium term and longer term value that we can add through, I suppose in the first instance, there's part of this deposit which is already drilled out to great control status with measured sticking at surface with practically zero strip, with some beautiful grades in it, as you've just seen. It's not going to be very hard to get to that prize at some scale. We are looking at bulk sampling and pilot plant testing, which is really, if we do it right, could become that first phase of production and could bring that production scenario forward quite feasibly. So we're doing some hard studies on that. Beyond that, the exploration potential on the deposit, the 1.84 million ounces, some beautiful leverage points we could actually hit, I think, to keep growing that resource. And if you looked at our resource growth trajectory over the last few years, on an upward trend, not a flat trend or a downward trend. And then beyond that, the exploration program in the district, we're sat on in the middle of the Keith Kilkenny structure on, probably the most prolific greenstone belt, where to the north and south of me, I've got multi-million ounce deposits. And the journey we're on at the moment with that regional exploration program is perhaps quite exciting. Drill-based gold anomaly with 40 kilometres of strike, 20 kilometres of width, 20 prospects on it already. And some of those are really starting to show some legs. So yes and no.
Okay. Yeah. I look at Capricorn, CMM's a code as a bit of a benchmark in the gold sector. I know it's differentiated a little bit from the likes of Northern Star, but do you see yourself potentially replicating that growth trajectory, Ian?
Absolutely. The value proposition that I think we've already represented in our preliminary economic assessment is not a million miles from where Capricorn Metals started. When you look at their they did a scoping study and then a PFS, slightly different deposits, but similar size. Capricorn ended up being about 2 million ounce resource and a million ounce reserve. I think we'll see much higher conversion under a heap leach scenario. I think the grade of Apollo Capricorn was about 0.86, but their stripping ratio was 3.5, 4 to 1. Ours is 1.5 to 1. So those kind of offsets. So capital, obviously capital these days is a little bit more expensive than when Capricorn Metals did it. But again, I think we have this optionality with the fact that this deposit does sit up at surface, and we can run this kind of pilot phase, or at least plan that and try and bring that through a lot quicker. So there's a catalyst there. I think Headley, thank you. I'll thank him. Described it as a big strategic asset, and I think this one's really going to, a bit like Capricorn, won't catch me by surprise, but I think it's going to catch a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those markets where no one believes. And if we could just have a across the board re-rating in enterprise value, which is obviously gold in the ground divided by the market cap, certainly even if it goes back up to $40-50, then obviously you're going to get a bit of a lift in the share price, and I guess shareholders get their win and their hit of dopamine. But I guess you're there to build a gold company. You're obviously determined to do so. You have your defense mechanisms which differentiate yourself, and hopefully you can grow this company and live up to its potential. And again, I guess Headley's probably, this is going to be one of Headley's success stories.
I hope so.
Okay.
I'm planning on it. I'll make sure.
All right. Thanks a lot, Ian.
Success stories. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers.
You're welcome.